Hello, everyone. Welcome to our event today. We are really excited to have both Ben Peck here and you here with us today to speak to Ben. Ben is Ben. We won't be modest. You're very well known in the design community. You've been around a few areas, so we're really excited. We're excited to have you have this conversation. I'm Brandon Gardner, the host of this webinar series, founder of Sembrar. Would love to talk more about Sembrar. We will hold that until later, maybe the middle of the show, just to really set what we are doing today. We are here to discuss with Ben, particularly around the topic of design resources and how do we use design resources and utilize those design resources today in constrained, particularly budget constrained environments. So we're going to get Ben's perspective on how to do this and how to do this well. Ben, you've been around the design community for quite some time. How about you give a quick introduction to yourself? And I also hear you have a big event coming up next week.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me on the show, the podcast, the
Webinar,
shoot.
whatever we
Yeah.
call them these days. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. A little bit about me, if you don't know who I am. I've been in the industry. It'll be 20 years next year, which seems crazy to me, but I started out in like the design agency world and have been in tech companies, 4 or 5 different tech companies over the past 15 or so years. But yeah, I also actually partnered with you on creating a community called Product Hive that exists, that's been around for 10 years now, which is also crazy to even think about. And then I run a conference um, called Front that I've been doing for about 8 years now. So I'm my current role right now is I'm a senior product design manager at Encino. And I've been just leading design teams of various sizes over the past seven years ish. So yeah.
Ben, you've held some different titles, but doing some similar things. I know when we talk about it, what are all the different titles as a designer you've held over those 20 years?
Oh man, I think I wrote an article about this. It's out there somewhere if you want to go search for it. But um I don't know. I've had graphic designer, interaction designer, interface designer, UX designer. I think it's product designer at this point. I've had probably, I don't know, I want to say it's close to 10 at this point of how often we like to change our titles in this industry. But
Yeah.
um I call it the grit, like the UX existential crisis. Like every few years we're like, who are we need to reinvent ourselves. What's our new title?
But what you do changed significantly over that time? I guess maybe it's been refined and honed.
I would say from the graphic design to like more UX design, it started to change a bit, but overall just doing design work for software companies hasn't really changed a ton.
Yeah,
um but
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
for sure.
Well, Ben, it is, as you know, it's always a pleasure to get together with you and to have conversations. And I look forward to the one today, particularly uh, what I've been seeing is there's a lot of resources that are not there and that used to be there, and we need to do more with less. It seems to be the mantra of the past year and a half or 2 years. And so, I'd love for you to talk about a little bit more about why is this topic of really creating efficient design teams or design system, why is this important for you as a practitioner, as an employee, and as someone who loves this field?
Yeah, so historically, just in the design industry, and particularly the software design industry, there's two core things that every tech company highly values a lot. It's really the business, the bottom line, the money. Like, are we making money with this business? And then who's creating it? And that generally is revolved around development, like who's developing it. So you got business and development, and those two things are like core to the business. And then a lot of these businesses think about design as this, they might not say it like this, but it's a nice to have. It's a, we could get better at what we do if we did better design. And we use design to um, know what we should build next, or know what is the next thing that we could make more money on. And so we've always felt a bit of a sense of constraint from the design side to get resources to say, hey, I can help you with what you want to build and what you want to do. But I think we've seen, like you said, over the past year or two, an intensity of that constraint of what is it that can design can do with even less resources or limited resources. And I think research plays into that, but it's been even farther down in that, where it just gets cut out. If you're a dedicated researcher, you can kind of gotten the low end of this, the short end of the stick, if you want to say.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
for me, I think it's always been, as managing design teams over the past 6 or 7 years, it's been very top of mind. It's how do I get what I want to get done, and how do I collaborate with my partners, product and design, in particular, I mean, product and development, in particular, what is it that we can do to um, leverage those benefits in the most efficient possible way we can.
yeah, yeah. Well, I'd love to hear some of your stories and what you've done. It feels like we felt constrained prior, and now there's even more constraint. Uh, and as you have built your career, over the past 20 years, it's probably ebbed and flowed and in forms and shapes during that time. So love to hear more about what are some of the areas that where you gained efficiencies, and maybe you can tell us some of the stories of where you saw and where you were able to gain some efficiencies, and let's maybe just go through a few things and we'll discuss those.
Yeah, so for a little bit of context of my own history of management, I've managed three different teams at three different companies. So there was a company called Jane.com that I managed, a small team of 5 designers. After that, I worked at a company called Seismic, where I started as the first design director at a 600 employee company with 8 designers, and we scaled up from 8 to 35. And then we most recently at Encino, we're a team of 20, I want to say 26 designers now, and I manage a team of 7 of those. So just as a context of the team sizes that I've managed, at Jane, I started as there was 1 designer, 1 PM, and me as a director, and 30 developers. So that 1 designer was really trying to keep up with 30 developers and 1 PM.
Yeah.
And you could obviously see the business could see the constraint of, we're not moving fast enough. So how do we scale that to a more reasonable size? So we scaled that 1 designer to 5 designers, so that there was more of a 1 to like 6 or 7 development, and we could move a lot faster. That was an efficiency, but you had to invest in the design hiring to be able to accomplish that.
Mhm.
Um, that was in a time of abundance, I would say, in a time when you could hire more people to be more efficient. Fast forward to today, where I'm at right now, I've got 1 designer for 2.5 PMs to 11 engineers, and I'm not getting more headcount to say, hey, let's go and do, we need 1 designer to 1 PM, or 1 designer to less engineers. How do we be more efficient? And over my time at Seismic and even here at Encino, I'm over their design systems teams. So each organization, um, they're very similar sized organizations. Encino's 2,000 employees, and Seismic was, when I left there, around 1,300 employees. So having a system, a dedicated design systems team that could create efficiency for the rest of the larger design organization, really made a huge impact. And having a dedicated designer for that was, you had to show the value of what that looked like.
So then I know at past organizations that I've been at, it can be pretty difficult to explain what a design system is and how it can help. How did you get over this conversation where it's just like, hey, you're already strapped. You're strapped. You have one designer for 2.5 PMs to 11 to 12 developers. So you're already strapped. How do you convince someone saying, okay, we're going to take one of these designers and they're going to be focused on this design system and we're going to gain efficiencies out of this, but can feel sometimes like pie in the sky, or are we really going to, how long is it going to take you? So how do you get through those conversations of building efficiencies when it feels like you're actually taking away from what you already have?
Yeah. So to make it as real as possible, when I joined, now it was called Percolate. I got acquired into Seismic. The value that the reason why we got investment into design systems was we were creating a developer portal, and we needed a design system to give those external developers something to follow if they were going to build things for our platform. So it was a platform initiative, and that was what put investment into saying, yes, we do need to do this. We do need to focus on it. And at the time, Percolate, before they were acquired into Seismic, was only a team of 150. We only had 3 designers. And to take those 3 designers and put one of them on focusing on the design system was a risk. Like, it was, do we really, really need this? But from a business perspective, they saw that value, and that's what kind of got the hook in. And we built that system. And Seismic wasn't building a developer platform. So when we got acquired in, that was actually a huge benefit for them to have us have a design system that was in place, that was codified, that they could actually use as a foundation for all of their platforms, because they weren't following a unified componentized design system. And so that efficiency gain was like a huge benefit to Seismic. But it really did come down to what's the business value of us improving
Yeah.
this.
So let's go into that. Like, what were the business value? Like, let's go in specifically into, for our guests, like what would they go and what are the 3 or 4 key points? And when you're talking to the, primary stakeholders, business stakeholders around the value, when they're concerned around taking one out of their 3 developers to go focus on, what are the values you need to really be hitting on to sell it? So you obviously were successful in selling it at that point.
Yeah, so I think engineering in a general sense, finds a lot of efficiency gains out of a design system. But at the end of the day, talking to the business to say, we're going to focus a partial of this designer's time on this design system, um, really came down to dollars of what is the benefit that we're going to get if this system exists for developers versus not. So we had to speak the financial gain,
Yeah.
first and foremost, of what are we getting out of this. And then it was a partnership with development to say there's technical efficiency gains, tech debt that does not, that instantly gets reduced by having a system to follow. And so you get investment from the business from a financial gain, and then you get investment from the development platform, like the development team, to say we need dedicated developers to this just as much as we need design.
Yeah.
Um, back to those two core pillars of what every tech company cares the most about is like financial, like profitability, and how do we build it and how do we build it faster? If they think that things can get built faster, they'll invest effort and time into it.
So what I heard is you need to figure out the dollar signs. Let's dive into that a little bit. You need to figure out the dollar signs, and then you're talking with your engineering team going, our speed is going to increase, which helps us get to market faster. And it's easy to talk to the business then about that, saying, "Hey, speed to market." That's always a big conversation. So, and then what I also gain out of that is you partnered with your engineering team. You weren't going alone at this conversation. You were actually partnering with your engineering team to have this conversation. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I actually find that, at least in my experience, the partnership of design and engineering is what drives design systems, less so a partnership between product and design. Often the companies we don't need a PM on the design systems team. We have an engineering manager and we have a design lead, that can drive it without product per se, but
Yeah.
product is leveraging it in other feature sets and in other areas of the platform.
I
Uh,
think. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Keep going.
yeah, and really the product plays into the business side of it of, hey, we're trying to close these deals with these customers. They're asking for these integrations. If we had a developer platform that could build those integrations faster for us, and we weren't actually the ones building it, we're leveraging, back to the efficiency gains of like we could leverage external people to build stuff for us if we don't, and we don't even need to pay them, but we need to provide a platform for them and support that platform. And if we can put a few of our engineers on that platform, we'll gain the opportunity, the ACV or whatever, you like annual contract value could go up this amount if we looking at the current deals we're working with.
So I think that's a interesting, insight there is don't your product team is maybe more of someone you have to convince, but you work with your engineering team. They are going to be your primary partner in doing this. One, they have to build it, but two, they have nearly as much at stake at building this as others in their and how it's going to impact their speed and development. So I think that's great. It's like work more with the engineering team maybe than with the product team and putting together the so what and the why behind the.
Yeah. And if you think about the different sizes of organizations, if people are here in this like webinar and are saying, well, I'm only a team of 150 people, or I'm a team of 1,000 or even 500, at different levels of size of organization is the different, like I call it like the Goldilocks approach of like how much of our time can we invest in it now with the resources that we currently have. um, what I saw when you had 150 people, you were you would try to see which developer is the most interested in creating components that are shareable, or which designer is most interested in helping us be more efficient across component usage in Figma or Sketch at the time. Um, and we participate part of their time towards that, but it wasn't a dedicated designer at the time. We got acquired into Seismic, became 600 employees. We were about 750 before we said, we need a dedicated designer to this. And that's all they should do. They shouldn't be working on feature development. We need a dedicated engineering manager and a dedicated set of engineers focused on supporting the rest of the team. There's certain inflection points where those become like valuable 100% dedicated resources towards it versus partially timed resources.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's fantastic. I think we want to touch on that a little bit more. Ben, we're going to take a quick break. Let's talk a little bit about Sembrar, and then let's come back and really focus in on it. And just to remind our audience, there's a QA button. We didn't mention this at the beginning, but there's a question answer button there at the bottom. Go ahead, you can press that if you have any questions. We are monitoring any questions that come in that you have specifically for Ben. Feel free to go in there and share that. But also wanted to just tell you a little bit about what Sembrar is, who we are, and what we do. And it's very pertinent to the conversation that we've been talking about today. If your product team, designers, researchers, product marketers are stretched thin, if there's just too many side projects, if you can't find the right experience, you're falling behind, or budgets are being cut, have you considered someone maybe who's more fractional basis, someone who is part-time, very senior, trusted in their industry, trusted in their craft, whether you're product managers, designers, or product marketers? Sembrar really focuses our time around the product craft. Again, whether that's product management, design, or product marketing, even developers. We really focus on having high expertise individuals who are fractional that can come in and work with your company. We work with all different types of SaaS companies, from fintech, health tech, martech, insurance, with high expertise in each of these areas, whether it's product management, design, or product marketing. We work with leaders, founders in all these different areas, company stages from 0 to 50 million, really the seed stage to growth stage. And our product people work on an average 10 to 20 hours a week. So it's not a ton, but it's highly senior individuals who come in and really get a very specific project done. Here are just a few of the companies that we've worked with, from fintechs, also a nonprofit organization, Opportunity International, who we love. Just a quick quote from Mark. I love this. The product manager that was working at, it was Zox at the time, accelerated our product market fit and go-to-market activities, enabling us to generate greater revenue faster than they had imagined, all while just working 15 hours a week. It had a huge impact, and we were able to help them get to a Series A. I love, actually, I talked with Mark. He's told me directly, if it wasn't for the PM that worked with them, they would not be where they were at today, because they had that high expertise. We are doing an event on July 9th. You're already here. Come back for some more. We're going to talk about how to increase your product team's ROI, kind of much like the topic today. Here, reduce stress on your team, regardless of budget. This is going to be a workshop. It's going to be limited to 10 people because it is a workshop. It's on July 9th. Here's the QR code. Here's the QR code. Take a quick picture of that and register for that event on July 9th. We're also going to be sending it out to you through email. I'm also going to copy it here quickly in the comments, right here in the chat. There you are. There you are. Well, we'll send it out right after this. All right, we'll get that out. Yeah, we'd love to see you there. It's a free workshop for you and your team, to how you can do more with less. And here's different ways to get a hold of us. Just quickly, if you answer a quick question for me, have you would you ever consider hiring a fractional product person, PM, designer? And I'm going to leave that poll up there just quickly. Would love to hear what your answers are to it, Ben. But let's get back to this topic here. One of the things that you had mentioned was really around how do you, around the financial gains and also the speed to market. Let's maybe go a little bit deeper into that, give people a sense of how do you talk to the financial gains? Like, what do you need to know? What do you need to be considering when you're coming up with these numbers that you're going to be sharing with the business? Like, how do you get to those financial numbers? How do you work with your team to get to those financial numbers?
I really think it depends on the size of the organization, but at Encino right now, that's the most like fresh on my mind, is they are looking at efficiencies across all of the engineering team at the moment. They use Jira, they use a tool called Jellyfish, and they show like what issues are we running into, and we call them PDIs, product development issues, but they're trying to reduce the amount of those issues. And as we look at those numbers, how much of those numbers are tied to whether we're using design system components versus not, just standard code, and how much an issue shows up, a bug shows up versus when we're using components versus not using components, um, is easy to show the amount of reduced cost and reduced efficiency gains you get from a development standpoint through something like that. That's just purely the design system side, but there's feature development, and we could spend much more time on feature development if we reduce this by a certain amount. At Encino, we use a very robust design system through the Salesforce design system. We use Lightning. And if we're not following Lightning, interestingly enough, if Lightning isn't moving fast enough, we build the components that they've identified to help create efficiency gains for us. And when it comes down to numbers, that's one of the ways that we've done it.
Cool. Very cool. Did you crunch the numbers? Did you have someone else crunch numbers? Who was crunching numbers?
We have a global engineering lead, a global product lead, and a global design lead that all looks at those efficiency gains.
Okay.
We can look at them through Figma. We can look at them through Jellyfish, but yeah, it's a leadership level view that we're
Yeah.
looking at.
Okay. And if they don't have all of those global leaders, if it's just a few designers who are like when you were at Jane, you just had a few, like what would you work with a finance team? Would you work with a product manager? Like how would you crunch those numbers in those situations?
Yeah, so it gets a little bit more scrappy in that scenario with Percolate and Seismic. It really was, we looked at actual sales values, customer requests asking for third-party support in things that they wanted us to build but weren't priorities for us, to then look at dollar amounts of sales cycles for renewals or a net new sales. And then we could potentially make X million amount of dollars based on this research that exists in Salesforce and through the sales teams. Um, Plus the efficiency gains that our engineering director could see without like Jellyfish or without analytical tools, but doing some digging around how many bugs are we fixing on a regular basis.
Very cool. You actually got it down to how many customers could we help save, which is really talking the business, talking to
Correct.
the business at that point. These are the
Yeah.
customers that we could win. These are the customers that we potentially develop more for. So I think that's really smart. Really start speaking that business language to sell this. So great suggestions. Let's move on to what else? What else do you do to create efficiencies in your design team?
Um, I I kind of want to lean into this. Well, we do two things. There's an essentially like a contribution model where if you can create a culture where you're contributing to the system, or to like an efficiency gain, whether that's engineering or whether that's design. uh there's there's been discussions around having a federated model versus a non-federated model. So if you can find ways to have contribution to it. So Figma just came out with new features relatively recently where you can branch Figma files in the same way that GitHub creates branches. So we are encouraging not only the one designer that's dedicated to our design system team, but the 20 designers that see missing pieces within that system to go and branch the design system, update or create components themselves, and have approvals go through design, in the same way that engineering does that through an open source model of design component usage. I think that's been pretty huge. And then other ways that we've looked at
Ben, Ben,
efficiency.
Ben, before you go on, I want to hear what the next one is as well. But so it's almost like, is this all in Figma then? You have like branching, you have a trunk, kind of like engineering, there's a trunk, and then you have different branches that you create within the design. So it's almost like a design system within in Figma. I'm not familiar with this, so I'm not
Yeah,
curious.
the way that design systems are being built within Figma is it's its own project, it's its own file. Each component exists inside of that file, and you publish that to all of basically the whole organization. So any other Figma file that you're creating a feature with, you pull those components into your file and they reference this other system. Now, now with branching within Figma, you can go take that whole system that one designer owns and kind of limit who publishes the components, but they can branch that whole file, create a new component, say, I created this new component, submit it for review,
Hmm.
and they merge that file into the main file and can publish that component all within Figma and not having to. I don't know if you remember the days of Sketch, but there was a tool called Abstract that was getting created that you could upload your files to, like a GitHub, but for design files, that then served as a repo to then say which is the most updated file, because there was no shared like online version. But this is Figma's really thinking like development
Yeah.
um collaboration tool in many ways, and they're implementing dev resources right within Figma to create a lot of alignment um with that code
Yeah.
aspect of it.
Very interesting. Yeah, they've taken definitely a chapter out of how development's been doing it for years and merging that into now the design and the design systems. Interesting. What else? What was the third you were going into of how you've worked with how you've built efficiencies into design teams?
Well, it actually aligns pretty well with like what Sembar does in a lot of ways. I think in my time at Seismic, less especially in the past two years, we leaned into the idea of contract to hire. So if if we felt like we needed to scale but wanted to scale in a safe way, we would hire a contract, but we always hired as if we were going to hire them full time. Don't hire a contractor that you wouldn't hire full time, because if that became a possibility, you would want to hire them full time and not just look at them as like you get to work on this little tiny part of the work, and um it's more of like an agency mental model, but it's truly part of the team, even if they're not fully embedded, but try to treat them like a full-time employee.
Yeah.
That really helped us quite a bit from a could we scale? Yes, we can do some work here, but if things didn't turn out well, we could kind of move on or um and scale up and down. Traditionally, I'd never really done that. It was always full-time hires. It's either you're dedicating a full-time hire and you fight for a full-time hire, or you don't. And I think startups, even large mid-sized companies, are looking at ways to use their resources wisely, but also um, scale up and down how they can do that.
Yeah.
Uh, I think.
Obviously,
Go
yeah.
ahead.
I was gonna say obviously Sembrier believes in that highly.
Yeah.
Uh, and thus wanting to enable teams to be able to do that contract to hire or work on small projects and treating them as like if they're a team member to really get outcomes. It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and even taking that same model of not hiring, but fractionally taking your team to like support in areas where there's more need, but not hire full time in that area until you feel like there needs to be a full time. There's a lot of that going on internally of just saying, do we really need a full time, or could somebody deprioritize this? So it's all around prioritization at that point of like, could we deprioritize these two things over here and put resources over here to be efficient with what we're doing? What I do find, and I would caution, is that sometimes that causes slowness of domain knowledge of a particular area if you're moving or you're fractionalizing your team so much that they're doing 12 things across 12 teams. It's not as you start to lose efficiency gains from that, where it might make more sense to hire fractionally somebody outside to do a part and keep the other people focused on the areas that they're in. So um, we've definitely done a
So,
lot of that
so Ben,
recently.
it sounds like in yours, like if you're trying to divide too much, you would use someone fractionally to then come in and work on something very specific. So you keep maybe your full-time people fully dedicated to the cash cow or something that was, highly important, that you really needed the high domain knowledge in that area.
Yeah, absolutely. The more you pull people outside into other areas of the application, because they have the industry value and the industry knowledge, it doesn't necessarily mean that they know everything. So for instance, Encino, we have big business units. There's commercial, there's small business, there's consumer, there's mortgage. Um, People that are working in the commercial business don't always know all the things that have to do with in mortgage because those are different realms. They're all in the financial world, but they're different realms of how people work and what people are doing. And it takes time to ramp up what you're trying to accomplish over in one area if you're pulling them out of their commercial mindset and understanding the user and the consumer and the customer. Um, so you just have to be smart about the way you fractionalize your
Yeah.
full-time
Yeah.
employees.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's definitely a way, as we talk with all our clients, there's a way to do it. There's a way not to do it. And you need to be careful on how you apply it and implement it in order to be successful and really get the gains out of it. So thanks for that. So, kind of do a review as we're running out of time here. And again, if there's any questions, please, we do have an open questions right now. So if you do have any questions, feel free to ask them as we're wrapping up here. But it sounds like what we went through was really the dedicated design systems, helping to sell that, how to build efficiencies out of that, something you have to invest into, but it can gain a lot of efficiencies over time. You went into the Figma and the branching of the Figma file and some of the new features there, to help save time, and leaning into this idea of contract to hire or using fractional resources appropriately where needed, to gain some efficiencies in particular areas, and to guard areas. Was there anything else?
I think the last thing that I can think of that we've done to improve efficiencies is consider tooling, investing in tooling versus headcount. So, is there a tool that you could use that would increase the efficiencies of existing headcount to help you move faster in some way versus hiring more people to do the work? And I think AI, like we didn't even talk about AI in any way, but I think that plays a huge role in it of like how can we take an automated method or an automated tool to improve the efficiencies of our people. Um, I think a decent example of that is in the sales industry is to use Apollo.
Yeah.
Apollo is a tool that will go automate invites and messages to multiple people that you don't have to do manually. And so you're not sending emails or messages to people on a regular basis that you can kind of efficiency gain. For us in product and design, a Pendo or a full story or a something that would gain insights a lot faster for us than doing that ourselves, doing individual usability tests,
Yeah.
use full story to go and see all the screen interactions that customers are doing and then do usability tests with those that you see are having problems as opposed to just doing 10 usability tests manually. Uh, but I think we don't think of those as like headcount costs. We think of those as additional costs. But when you look at the holistic approach of efficiency, I think tooling can play a big role in being more efficient.
Tooling can help one developer be, or sorry, designer be 20%, 30% more efficient. And if you expand that over 3 or 4, well, then you just made up a whole headcount essentially at that point. So that is a great suggestion. We did have a question from Mark. Thank you, Mark. Any rule of thumb for the ratio of design staff for developers, like 1 to 10? Does this change with org size or other factors?
Yeah, I've always kind of lived by the no more than 1 to 10 designer to 10 engineers. Um, I think it's fluctuated now of like 1 to 1 PM versus 1 to 1 or 1 to 2 PMs versus engineers. But at the same time, it really depends on uh, the org structure and what are needed. But I wouldn't go more than 10. I think it becomes difficult to keep up with that many developers building things when you're trying to stay ahead of them design wise.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thank you, Ben. Well, Ben, thank you for the conversation. Thank you for these great tips of things that can do to gain some efficiencies. Ben, if people want to reach out to you, can they? Is there a place they can reach out, or maybe come see you up front? Maybe give a plug for front here real quick.
Yeah, if y'all want to meet me next week, we got my front conference is happening Monday and Tuesday, and we've got a ton of great talks coming. Local leaders, a lot of good learning opportunities there. You can always hit me up over email. Um,
I'll be
Ben,
there, Ben. I'll come and meet you. I'll give you a hug.
yeah.
Yeah.
LinkedIn obviously is a common place that I'm happy to talk to anybody, and Twitter. So
All right.
you can find all my info at benpeck.com. So
Last question, Ben. You have 2 plants in your background, and Sembrard loves plants. What's your favorite plant, and what are those plants you have in your background? Do you even know?
I I don't even know. One's called I think a snake plant. I think this one's a snake plant. I love these two plants in general because they don't take a lot of watering. Like it really just they don't they survive really well. Now, the many other plants that we have in the house, if anybody knows how to keep an umbrella plant alive inside of a house, hit me up because I want to know how.
Umbrella plant. All right. I love internal plants. I have my plant over here as well. It's been alive for 15 plus years. It has, and it's flowering right now, which is very pretty. Well,
Impressive.
fantastic. Ben, thank you for being here. I always appreciate it. I always appreciate conversations. I always learn something from you in these conversations. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate the invite. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, and audience, thanks for joining us today, and hope you gained something out of this. We will be sending out the recording of this to all of you when we get it posted, and also links to join us on July 9th to go through a workshop on how you can help build some more efficiencies, what you need to be thinking about. Again, it's a limited to 10 people. We will be sending out the link to join that. And if you do want to learn more about Sembrar and what we do, go ahead and just leave your yes there on that poll I just posted. Otherwise, thank you so much, and we'll see you all next time. All right.
Thanks,
Bye.
everybody. Bye.